Before purchasing a Volkswagen, beware, beware, beware. Hello, my name is Gerard Henry, and thanks for tuning in. Listen, this video is for you if you're considering purchasing a Volkswagen, and especially if you live in the Richmond, Virginia area. Stay tuned. I just got rid of my 2014 Jetta Volkswagen. I purchased the car in 2018, 2018. I love the car, and I was looking for a car that I could keep for at least a decade. I was gonna take care of it, and it was gonna be my baby. Long story short, ignore this side. This is the paperwork. This is all of my receipts since I've had the vehicle, on just money that I poured into this car that I no longer have. Before purchasing a Volkswagen, unless you are wealthy, I would not recommend. Unless either you're wealthy or you have a really good mechanic that is not gonna rip you off. Keep in mind, this is just some of the paperwork. $553, $209, $327, $119, that was probably for a tire, $303, $266, $225. So every time you go to Volkswagen and you have an issue with your car, you're gonna have to pay a diagnostics fee and it's like $190 every time. It'll range, the prices will vary, but you're gonna pay around $180, $190 just for them to look at your car. They looked at my car, this was October. They're like, okay, Gerard, you need a thermostat, water pump, and a timing belt. I'm freaking out. The bill was gonna come up to like over $3,000. Thank God my brother was a mechanic. Long story short, I only had to pay for the parts, and my brother, he installed the water pump. He replaced those two. We didn't worry about the timing belt at the time. That was in December, he fixed those items for me. November, December, he fixed that for me. And so I'm trucking along. I'm like, all right, hopefully I can keep driving with minimal issues. March 19th, 2024, I'm having issues with my car again. So I go back to Volkswagen. I had to pay another $180 for the diagnostics. And they're like, okay, you need to repair all these items and your bill is gonna come up to $3,310 and change, right? Also on here, which was wild, they showed that I had to replace the timing belt, water pump, and thermostat, which they didn't know my brother had already repaired everything except for the timing belt. Crazy. So the only thing on here that really drew concern was the CV belt, the CV boot, I'm sorry. So in order for them, they weren't gonna replace the entire axle, which all of the other mechanics that I called around, they're like, we typically don't recommend just changing the boot. We recommend that you change the entire axle. So Volkswagen, I had that trust, that relationship with Volkswagen. I was like, I'll just take the car back to them. They changed the CV boot, and that was another $502. So I'm driving down the road, and maybe about 2 or 3 weeks later, I was having more issues, and I just figured that whoever worked on my car didn't do the work correctly, because it felt like it was towards the side where they replaced the CV boot. So you already know the drill. I go back to Volkswagen and they're like, okay, we'll check our work, but just in case, and it's another issue, you'll have to pay for the diagnostics costs. I'm like, okay, cool. Because I just knew they just didn't do the work right. $171 later, again, for the diagnostics. And they say, okay, Gerard, you... He hands me the paper and I'm just like, crap, what now? And so this time they're like, okay, so you have to replace the DSG wet clutch, which was gonna cost a little over $3,800, right? I'm speechless. So I go around to a few other shops. I go to this transmission shop and they're like, we typically don't recommend that you replace just the DSG wet clutch. We recommend you purchase a whole new transmission, right? I called around to a couple of other shops and they really didn't work on Volkswagens like that. And so really I had to stick with Volkswagen to fix this issue. And in my search, I did come across another great mechanic, but that was going to cost me another $200 for them to do another diagnostics, just for them to tell me if it was worth me keeping the car or not. But by this time, the car is really going downhill. I was involved in a car accident. So I did get a check for roughly $2,500. I just didn't know what to do. And my brother, he didn't work on Volkswagen. He doesn't work on Volkswagen transmissions. And I was kind of forced to deal with Volkswagen or get rid of the car. I took that check from the car accident and I went to CarMax. And about a week or so later, I went to CarMax, I sold my car, and I only had that much to pay on it. So I paid off the remaining balance, and now I have no car. And this is my main source of transportation, which I love. It's kind of just me getting back to the basics and not spending so much money on a depreciating asset. We live in a different era. Put it this way, when I first purchased my car, I was very excited and I'm thinking, wow, this is gonna be my car, similar to how my grandparents or my great-grandparents, how they were able to hang on to a car and have it for years. And that was my mindset when I purchased my car. And that's just not the case in this day and age. You have the increase of car accidents, and you have to keep in mind, whenever you're involved in a car accident, you're gonna get aftermarket parts. So that's gonna immediately bring down the value of your car. So car accidents, also if your car is not made or manufactured in the US, when you have cars that are primarily made overseas, you're gonna be at the will of these dealerships. Not a lot of people work on these foreign cars. It's just the cost of maintaining a vehicle these days. It can be costly. So I'm extremely excited with this next phase in my life, and I wish I would have came to this decision sooner. I work from home, so I really don't have to rely on a vehicle. And if it ever comes to that point when I do have to buy a vehicle, it's either going to be a car that I pay in cash, so no more than like 500 to maybe 4K is the most that I would probably spend on my next vehicle. It'll just be a car that gets me from point A to point Z. Or I'll consider leasing a vehicle, especially if I'm ever in that situation where work and whatever and I have to rely on a vehicle. I think for me personally, leasing a car would be in my best interest. So that's something I would look into. Or if I come across a great deal of money, I would just buy a decent used car, but nothing over 10K. I love my current situation. I'm saving a ton of money, and I'm also getting a lot of good exercise. There's Uber, Enterprise, there's this bus station, but I may break down and take the bus one day. I don't know. I'm just trying to make smarter decisions, and I don't know. If you're considering purchasing a Volkswagen, especially if you live in the Richmond, Virginia area, beware, and you will eventually get screwed over by these dealerships, these Volkswagen dealerships. Yeah, that's all I have. So today is First Friday, so I'm gonna go out and see what's going on downtown.